welcome to the Nerd Soul Show. I am Nathan.
And I'm Colin.
So, John is out again this week, but hopefully he'll be back soon. This week, as every week since Loki has been out, we are going to be talking about Loki, and this is the season finale of Loki because we found out. Well, this is largely reported. Slight spoiler that we're going to get a season two of Loki. So
Mhm.
that's been in the news, not necessarily spoiling the episode. Uh, but we're going to talk about the season finale, which is called what is it
For all time, always.
for all time always. We will chat about the what we think about the episode in a spoiler free fashion, like we usually do. Although that'll be a very short conversation because
Yes.
it's going to be very difficult to talk about this episode without some spoilers
Mhm.
because major things happen, even more than the previous episode. But with that, Colin, what did you think of this episode?
Yeah, like you said, Nathan, there was some major things that happened in this episode. Really, you can't really say much without spoiling it. Although, for those of you that have been watching the 5 episodes so far, there is some payoff to watching it from the very beginning to up until now. And of course, there is a huge reveal that's happening, which I'm not going to talk about any further. So overall, I would say definitely watch it because it's been blowing up the internet. The fact that it's also that there's going to be a season two is blowing up the internet as well. I think that Marvel has really captured a lot of synergy between Loki and also with Black Widow coming out at the same time. So it's really a great time to be a Marvel fan because of these two properties that are coming out right at the same moment and then just kind of enjoying it, whether or not you're seeing it in theaters or on Disney Plus. So definitely check them out if you're not even on the bandwagon now. Check them out.
Yeah. So as we said, it's going to be difficult to talk about the episode without spoiling it. So my synopsis is going to be pretty short. But I like the episode. I think that um, since everyone knows that there's going to be a season two, there weren't as many definitive answers to certain things
Mm-hmm.
as you might as you might expect, or as if you have become accustomed to getting definitive answers because of the two other Disney Plus shows, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and also WandaVision. They were very enclosed. They might have a second season of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but really, where they're probably more likely going to finish things off or continue things on in a Captain America 4 movie.
Mm-hmm.
So there were more definitive closures to storylines, and not that nothing was there. Not that there wasn't any reveals. There was actually a very major reveal
Mm-hmm.
in this episode, but there were also some things that were left dangling because it's more like a regular season of television than a miniseries
Right.
like Falcon and Winter Soldier and WandaVision.
Right.
So if people were looking for definitive answers, they unfortunately you're not going to get definitive answers to everything, but
Mm-hmm.
you get more show. So
Right.
so that's great. I mean, at this point, if you've watched all the last 5 episodes, you don't need our recommendation to say that to see this one, but if it helps, definitely see this episode because there's a lot of interesting things that happen in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Yeah.
so I am going to do a spoiler warning here. This is if you haven't seen the episode, bail out now. Go see the episode. If you are watching this not live, if you're watching this later on, you can just pause this and then go watch the episode and come back where we start because we're going to start spoiling the episode. Like I said, spoiler warning. So let's see where do you want to start? The very beginning, I guess. We started at the beginning of this episode, which is where we ended up at the end of the last episode, which is
Right.
at the door of the Citadel
Mm-hmm.
at the end of time.
Mm-hmm.
So, what did you think of the opening of this, and what happened after they got to the other side of that door?
Yeah, I thought it was really fascinating that after this was after episode 5 when you had Elias, they kind of enchanted Elias, and then Elias just kind of whisked away, and then you saw the big kind of castle that's there, and then you saw the loop of the which was basically the sacred timeline going in a loop fashion, and it's a very interesting kind of premise where it's almost saying that you're at the very end of time, but then you go back, you kind of loop around and go back at the very beginning. So it's like, so in that sense, it's very fascinating to kind of see what their theory is, what Marvel's kind of universe is all about in terms of like a time type of continuity type of thing. So I found that very fascinating. Some people kind of online kind of compared it to the Bifrost. You can't really have many different types of effects and things like that because of money and things like that. But I think that was fascinating. And then just going into the Citadel was very fascinating as well with the dark type of nature. You didn't really know what to expect. It kind of left a lot for suspense. Kind of, again, as I mentioned in previous episodes, it kind of keeps you at the edge of your seat because you don't know what exactly is going to happen. You kind of maybe think about there's some things that are happening, but then there's some things that may not be happening. So it's kind of like you're almost like in anticipation for what's the next shoe to drop as Sylvie and Loki was going into the building, and you were almost like them as well. You are almost like Sylvie and Loki at that point. And then, guess who shows up? It's actually Miss Minutes who shows up and basically tried to give them an offer that they couldn't refuse, basically. And so that was really fascinating on the end of, just to see the different perspective and just the different response that both of them had. Well, both of them really, of course, rejected the offer because of different kind of, I think, different types of mindsets, and we'll kind of talk about as to what the mindsets are. But they kind of rejected her offer based on certain ideas and certain things that they have, certain agendas that each of them have, which are very different, which you'll find out. So I just think that the setup was definitely very suspenseful. It kept you on the edge of your seat and really fascinating, and just kind of like you just want to keep turning the page and seeing what happens next.
Yeah. So I agree. Once they get to the Citadel, there's definitely a lot of ambiance, and I appreciate the set design. It seems it looked like everything was kind of fractured a little bit and had this kind of marbled look to it, but like marbled where, like, I don't know, time was leaking through the thing, the cracks. It was a very, very interesting set design that kind of set the stage in this giant manor where, as you said, they meet Miss Minutes, who says that the one who remains is the is the, I guess, the Lord of the Manor, or the Lord of the Citadel. He's offering these deals to turn back around, and their deals are very, very different. I mean,
Right.
all the things that she listed for Loki and like for Sylvie, you just get to have happy memories because
Pretty much.
because
Pretty much.
you've lived
Yeah.
you've lived thousands and thousands of years, like, and we didn't even know their ages, because we know Loki's thousands of years old because he shows up in Norse mythology, right? But she mentions before they go in, I've been doing this before you were even created. So she's even older than he is. So she's been running for a very long time.
Right.
And all she's known is misery because the one who remains has been having had his not timekeepers, the hunters,
Sacred timeline?
the hunters,
Okay, the hunters,
after for thousands and thousands of years, maybe many millennia. So yeah, she's very single-minded in her pursuit, which is going to cause some issues later on in the episode, because you got to imagine that Loki meeting her has changed him in a profound way, but it hasn't changed her nearly as profoundly because it's a very new thing and a very, 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 very long lifetime, and if you think that he's long lived, it's quite to exponentially longer for her. So
Hmm.
of course she's not going to switch or look on the small encounters that she's had with him in a way that was going
Right.
to deter her from her goals that she's had for several human lifetimes now. So that was pretty interesting.
Hmm.
But they push forward for different reasons. I think he's pushing forward because he wants to be by her side, and
Right.
uh, and she's pushing forward for completely different reasons. And he thinks that they're pushing forward for very similar reasons, but they come to loggerheads later on when they
Yeah.
realize that their agendas are not aligned.
Right.
But yeah, then I think is it do immediately meet who's behind everything after that, or do we go back to the TVA? I think we meet him right after that,
Yeah,
right?
there is a scene with Renslayer. I think there was a brief scene. I don't remember if they cut to the scene with the TVA with Renslayer, and then Mobius being back, and then him, and then them, and then Renslayer finding out that Mobius is still alive and things like that. I'm not sure if they. I don't remember what place was that in within because much of the episode was focused on the Citadel. They didn't really focus too much on the TVA.
Right.
So you did see Renslayer and Mobius coming together, and then basically they're also at odds with each other as well for different reasons because of what transpired with the timekeepers and stuff like that. And then we also kind of get to see like Renslayer kind of have that portal open up and then basically jump to something. And then I think she had files as well. Actually, I think it was after when Miss Minutes left. Miss Minutes then came back to the TVA and basically showed Renslayer those files. And then at that point, we don't know whether or not, what type of information that Miss Minutes give Renslayer, but she did kind of hinted that it would be more useful to kind of use this information,
Yeah.
and things like that. So I think that did the TVA part, like you said.
I'm not sure if I don't remember the sequence of events, whether or not this happened in this episode or the previous episode, because it's been
Mm-hmm.
a couple days since the episode. But Miss Minutes said specifically, so she comes back with what she asked for, or she comes back and Renslayer says this is not what I asked for,
Right.
but she says I know, but he thinks this will be of more use.
Right. Exactly.
So now Renslayer is on a mission to find out who he is. So they go back.
Mm-hmm.
They go back and forth. Mobius and she go back and forth about who betrayed who, and
Right.
they help both have points. I mean, because she definitely pruned him, but given their lifespans, you got to imagine that they've been friends for, like she said, millennia's, much longer than either one of these Lokis have existed.
Mm-hmm.
And he was led astray by two Lokis,
Right.
to kind of give up their friendship. She has a point. He has a point, of course,
Mm-hmm.
and she seems to be definitely wedded to the order that was created by whoever's in charge. So she's really interested in finding out who is in charge. And
Right.
in the comics, and I think we've mentioned this before, probably more than once, Renslayer is always connected to Kang the Conqueror
Mm-hmm.
as a love interest.
Right.
There are different variations of her, and there are different variations of him. So her involvement in this show was a big hint as to what was going on in the background,
Right.
even if this version of her doesn't know what's going on in the background. So
Right.
yeah, so that leads us back to the Citadel and the big reveal that Jonathan Majors shows up as who we
Mm-hmm.
expect him to. Well, he's
A
not.
version of him, basically.
He's not quite who we expect him to.
Right.
I suspect that this performance in this episode was one-off performance, and this is not how he's going to perform this character when he's more of Kang the Conqueror. And the
Right.
in the comic books, there are several different versions of Kang, and again, this is something that we've mentioned in the past as well. There's even a Kang, a younger Kang who is Iron Lad, and
Right.
that Kang might show up in that Kang might show up in some version of a Young Avengers, either a television show or a movie. So that Kang is going to show up at some point. This Kang is more like, I guess, a Mortis, who's like
Right.
a very very old version of Kang, who is more benevolent. I mean, as Kangs go anyway. Even this Kang says that he's a villain, but as villains go, he's less of a villain than the Conqueror.
Right.
So I really enjoyed Jonathan Majors' performance and delivery. It was kind of like, sort of like a Willy Wonka kind of thing, but
Yeah.
also other things, other notes of like a madman. I guess Willy Wonka also sort of comes off as a madman, but he's definitely
Right.
comes off as someone who's been in isolation for a very long time, because he has been in isolation for a very long time. So,
Right.
what did you think of Kang's appearance, or
Yeah.
the one who remains appearance? Because I guess it's not technically Kang the Conqueror. So,
Yeah. Just big review. When I first saw it, I was like, oh, they are going there, because you kind of in the Falcon Winter Soldier, you didn't really get that big reviews. I think Isaiah Bradley might have been a big reveal,
mm-hmm.
but this is like, because, and also in WandaVision, with Ralph Boner, it was a sort of a tease type of reveal. It wasn't like, and then the whole internet was blowing up about Evan Peters returning, but it kind of was a little bit of a letdown, from a lot of fans, I would think. But then having Jonathan Majors there, he's been rumored as King the Conqueror. Everyone kind of knew, because everyone knew who he was based on the casting news and things like that, and that he's going to appear in the third Ant-Man movie. So we knew who he was. So when we saw him, we were like, oh my, that type of reveal. Like, we didn't really want to believe it. All the hints, they were dropping all the hints and stuff like that. But we thought maybe they would do this in post-credit scene or something. But no, they really kind of went for it. And I think that was really great, for Marvel to just kind of go for it. And his performance was definitely very eccentric.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, very eccentric. Kind of, that he's brilliant in some ways,
Yes.
and that he's also like, he has very different agendas, but also kind of a weary type of, jaded type of guy. You sense from him that he definitely also had this kind of a jovial nature to him, because probably he had, like you said, Nathan, he didn't even see many people before, so he's like, oh, I'm very happy to see you guys. You kind of unlock the mystery behind all the other mysteries, and things like that. And that, I think that at one point he also offered them like his kingdom and things like that, and making sure the sacred timeline was, because he said that he's old.
Yeah.
So I think that there's definitely a lot of layers to how he is. But and that's very true, because he's probably lived a lot of lifetimes to kind of get to that point, and he's kind of time weary or road weary of all the different types of things going on. And so, I think that he definitely displayed all those different layers. Jonathan Majors did, with all those different layers of who Immortus / King was within that kind of small amount of time that he was in. He was brilliant in that. So I just found his performance to be really, really great.
Yeah, it was. This whole episode is written very well, and it wasn't even. I mean, there was some action in it a little bit. There was I guess, a little bit of an action scene between Mobius and Renslayer, and then a major action scene between the two Lokis when they came to loggerheads about what to do with what the one who remains told them about,
Right.
his position, and why he created TVA in the first place. And
Right.
I mean, he kind of lays it out. You might hate the dictator, but you're not going to like what happens when the dictator's gone.
Right.
You're not going to like the vacuum, because he saw it, and it only almost led to the destruction of everything. And so that one part of the TVA propaganda was true.
Mm-hmm.
And he also lays out that he found Eliath, as you said, and
Mm-hmm.
he used Eliath to kind of prune or get rid of the other timelines, or the other things that are pruned from
Right.
the timeline. So yeah, I guess, I mean, that opens up all kinds of interesting things. I guess what happened to Cap at the end of Endgame happened after the timeline fractured, and after the Lokis fight each other, and
Mm-hmm.
after Sylvie pushes Loki back, because if you look behind, sorry, after he says all this, and he says, okay, and he's playing with them the entire time, because Sylvie and Loki keep trying to kill him, and he keeps moving out of the way, and then he says,
Right.
I know everything you're going to do, because I'm the one who put you on this path, and
Right.
you just walk down this path. And then he gets to the point, and he said, well, I fibbed a little bit. After this point, I don't know what's going to happen. And
Mm-hmm.
you can see behind him the window. It's a beautiful set decoration. That iris window. You
Yep.
can see the timeline fracturing, and not just fracturing from it looks like a fractal behind him.
Mm-hmm.
How many fractures there are. So and he's like, you got to make a decision, because it's a point of no return. You can believe me or not. You guys can go back and take over, or you can kill me, and you can see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is just so brilliant. I think that, like you said about the propaganda being true, it just kind of raises a lot of questions, and also a very, very interesting real life question about power vacuums and about just like power in general. Yeah, the guy is bad, the guy's evil, but is it a
It's
necessary evil
Yeah. Is it
because of all the things that are happening? Go ahead.
is
Go
it
ahead.
is it better than chaos? Is it better than
Right.
lawlessness? Is it better than total annihilation, which will come when there are many, many, many versions of him vying for power across the multiverse? I mean,
Hmm.
and like you said, it has real world uh, um, um, analogs
Right.
in our world. Unfortunately, there are strong men who are in charge of countries, but because the infrastructure and institutions are so weak, in the absence of those strong men, um, countries go into become failed states, or
Hmm.
they become fragile states,
Right.
because the institutions to actually maintain order or maintain stability aren't there, because the institution was the strong man, right? So
Right. Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I just found that piece very fascinating, and also like how I think that also how Sylvie tries to frame it and Loki tries to frame it as though it's free will.
Yeah.
And it's like what is the kind of the cost? Is it that necessary evil of a strong man being that kind of dictator,
Mm-hmm.
or is it like free will and democracy and freedom? So these are actually issues that we deal with in our modern times in real life,
Mm-hmm.
and has dealt with for many, many different centuries, thousands of years. This has been dealt with. So I think that it was very creative with the writers to kind of put that in there to kind of say, look, this is what's going to happen if the sacred timeline gets messed up. And
Right.
so I think that it was a very interesting choice to kind of put it up to Loki and with Sylvie to say, look, what is going to be your choice on whether or not you want to mess this all up, or do you want to keep everything sacred as sacred as Kang has had with the TVA. So, and again, this is where the two Lokis, Sylvie and Loki, diverged from their thinking, because it seems as though Loki was kind of like, you know what? I think that because I want to be with you, Sylvie, I am not going to kind of mess things up. Like, because of my love for you. That's basically what he was trying to say. And for Sylvie, it's like that kind of like straight arrow, 1 point toward the goal, 1 point toward the mission, and has been very consistent throughout all of the episodes. This is the end of the line for this type of thing that's happening with her. And so for her, it's almost like, okay, I need to complete the mission. I need to really, make sure that things that happen to me don't happen to other people. And so I think it's only from her, but she doesn't realize that, because of the fractures, it could affect all other things. But because she's been so focused on this for thousands and thousands of years, she's become very narrow-minded in that mindset of, I need to accomplish my goal.
She can't see anything else.
Right, exactly.
And you can't. I guess you can be mad at her the way that people were mad at Peter Quill was mad at Peter Quill for like years, but
yes,
you got to understand things from her perspective. She's never known a life beyond running, and like since she was a child, basically, she's never had any sort of life, and all she's had is misery and running to try to save her life. Otherwise, she would have been pruned, and she would have been dead thousands and thousands of years ago. So she's been running, and she's never been. I think someone raised this or said this very well. So she can't trust anyone, and Loki can't be trusted because of who he is. So it never was going to end as happily as Loki hoped, or as happily as the people on the internet shipped them hoped.
Of course.
They might get there at some point, but it wasn't never going to happen immediately. So maybe she just needs to see the repercussions of her actions before they can get to some point where they are somewhat on the same page. And we see that in season 2 and maybe season 3 or whatever. I don't know how many seasons they intend to do this, but I think that we're gonna see the repercussions of what happened at the end of this episode. We're going to see even earlier than season 2. We're going to see it in the Multiverse of Madness. We're going to see it in Quantumania. We might see it in other places as well, like the new Spider-Man movie as well. So we're this right after this is the What If series. So I guess you posit that after this happened, we have all these different universes now in the What If series. So just in a couple weeks, we have repercussions out of the multiverse being created again, or being allowed to exist again.
Right, so. And so it's going to be very fascinating to kind of see that, and I think that you're right. Is that I think that there's definitely love that's already been established, in the episodes prior, but it's almost as though there are different points of it, because I think that for Loki, he's ready. He's like, I'm ready to give my all, and it was very emotional. At their final kind of scenes together, it was very emotional. It was just like he didn't really say that he loved her, but he said that I just want you to be okay.
Right.
And I think that there's definitely him being Loki. He can't
bring himself
express it. Yeah. He can't bring himself to say it, and he can't express it in the way that he should express it. On the other hand, Sylvie is only kind of know this type of life of unhappiness, of living in apocalyptic worlds and just misery almost in her life. And for the one shining moment that she's been with him, she's like, it's really not enough. It's really like, I have seen bitterness and sadness all throughout. So I think for her, it's almost like, you know what? I know how you feel, but I'm not ready for that yet. And and that's very true in many relationships, budding relationships or relationships that don't work out. That's what happens sometimes, is that, people are in different phases of their lives. And I think that that's what kind of resonates with me in terms of their relationship, is that you can definitely see those types of levels of readiness, or no one's really ready, but like different types of phases in which they're living their lives right now. And I think that Loki was definitely at a point where he was like, you know what, I'm really going to go for it. But it's very surprising that Sylvie was the one who kissed him. It wasn't Loki who was initiating it.
Yeah,
It was so that was very interesting.
and it's also hard to tell whether or not she meant it, but also wasn't going to be
Right.
deterred, or she
Right.
was using that to distract him to get him out of the way. And I guess we don't
Correct.
we don't get to know that until season two, whether or not she has some reciprocal feelings, but
Hmm.
those feelings are not going to override or overrun her goal, the goal that,
Correct.
that that she has had for the longest time. So I
Hmm.
guess we find that out later. And before that, we get an interesting scene back and forth with them as they're fighting, using magic, and we actually see Sylvie using magic that we haven't seen her use before, and it's unclear whether or not she was just holding back or she's just learned from Loki. Just like in the previous episode, he learned from her how to
Hmm.
enchant, by trusting her and working together with her. That's how they
Hmm.
enchanted Elias, working together. So maybe she just picked up some things from him. So
Hmm.
we get swords, teleportation, we get energy blast. So it was a very interesting fight scene between the two of them. Much better and much less sloppy than the previous fight scenes, basically in the entire series. So hopefully they get a better fight choreographer if they're going to do a season two, on the show. And some or whoever did the choreography for the last scene, maybe have them do the choreography for season two, especially if they're gonna insist on doing fights instead of like people sitting around and talking. I mean, I wouldn't mind people just sitting around and talking, but I know this is a Marvel show and people want the action. So
Right. I think it definitely was necessary. It was very funny because people were like saying, why is there so much talking? Why? But it worked. I mean, it definitely worked for the moment. And again, it brought up a lot of different issues like power vacuums and love and also another layer of Kang's performance was kind of like being the person in the background and the like almost we are Kang in that moment when they were having their romantic moment, Sylvie and Loki. He was in the background. He was the one. You can see probably
yeah,
if he had some popcorn, he probably would be like
yeah.
soaking it all up,
He
and
was he
it's
was
like
def-
it's so funny and interesting.
he was definitely enjoying himself for probably a lot of different reasons. One of the reasons was that this is something that he didn't know was going to happen, and there aren't
Right.
many things in the universe that he didn't know was going to happen. So this is the first new thing for him, probably in many, probably maybe millions of years. I don't know how long he's kept the sacred timeline together. So that's part of the reason he was kind of giddy. You would assume and he just didn't know how it was going to end, whether or not she was going to win, he was going to win. So it was just exciting to see. But she pushes him through the portal.
Right.
Um, this is after they go past the point of no return. So,
Hmm.
or the thresh the I think he said the threshold.
Right.
So once they go past the threshold, the timeline already starts to fracture because, like I said, you see that outside the window behind him, that it's already starting to fracture. And after Loki gets pushed into what I guess Sylvie believes is the TVA, and
Hmm.
we'll get back to that in a second. But then she's left alone with Immortus, or the one who remains, and
Hmm.
pushes the desk out of the way, and he says something to the fact of are you going to fight, and he says, and I think he says no. She stabs him, and he says, I'll see you soon.
Yeah, I know it's kind of weird. It's like with the wink. It's like
With a
I'll
wink.
see you soon. Yeah,
So
wink,
yeah,
wink.
because he wasn't, apparently he was not lying,
Oh yeah, he
because
wasn't lying.
she's kind of deflected on the floor, and she
Hmm.
thinks that everything is over now, but no, it's just the beginning of everything now.
Right.
And then we end the show Loki feeling dejected, but he picks himself up and he tries to find his other love from this series, Mobius, to try to try
This romance, yeah.
to fix the problem that they created.
Right.
But the way that I read this is that once the timeline started to fracture, she
Hmm.
thought that she was sending him back to the TVA, but she obviously sent him back to a branch that has
Mm,
fractured, and a branch that all the TVA was controlled by Kang, because we see a giant statue of Kang, and
right.
and Mobius and Hunter B-15 do not know does not know who he is. So yeah, it's a very interesting kind of Planet of the Apes ending, where the statue is not the statue that he expects.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, that's so yeah, it was so fascinating to kind of see that like, oh, who are you? Like, who am I? It's like stuff like that. And I think also like Tom Hiddleston, I mean, that emotion, like right after he got pulled into he got
push.
whisked away
Yeah,
into he had those tears,
yeah,
man, like tears, you can see the teardrops coming from it, coming from it. And I'm like, damn, that's really good, really good on his part,
yeah.
acting on his part, that he was able to kind of have those tears that come in. I don't think those tears are computer generated,
Yeah,
to be
yeah.
honest. So that was pretty good acting, and yeah, I think that's definitely something we'll hopefully find out in season 2 with now that Kang is now the statue. He's now at the forefront. No more hiding from him anymore.
No, no space
And
lizards anymore. Yeah,
yeah, no space lizards, exactly. And then what's also interesting is that you don't get to see what happened to Renslayer either, because she went through that portal. We don't know what happened to her, so will be very interesting to kind of see where she's at right now. And I think that it also kind of because Hunter B-15 was there at the end. I don't know if that kind of wiped out the fact that Hunter B-15 found out that she's also not that she's a variant. She already knew that she was a variant, but that Renslayer was a variant from
I
like
think
2018. That
on,
was kind of interesting.
honestly, I think this is just a different B-15, and this is a different Mobius. Otherwise, they
Got
would
it.
have recognized Loki. I think these are completely different versions on a completely different timeline.
Hmm.
Because once the sacred timeline is fractured, who knows where Sylvie sent him back to? Who
Got it.
knows? I mean, obviously a timeline where Kang is a conqueror, because he doesn't look kind of mercurial and and giddy in that statue. He seems like that's the Kang the Conqueror from the comic books. The I mean, I guess the Immortus one is also a dictator, but
Hmm.
the iron fisted dictator.
Right.
That's the Kang in that giant giant statue. So
Hmm.
uh, I don't know. He has to get back to not even. I guess there is no sacred timeline now. Has to get back to the timeline where Mobius actually knows him, uh, so they can formulate some sort of plan. Also, I guess Mobius and also everyone else in the TVA was sort of sidelined in this episode, except for the fact that we get the reveal, like you said, that Renslayer was a principal in 2018.
Hmm.
And if you look back in that episode, she's using an alias that
Right.
is sorry, she's using her name in the diploma is an alias that Ravonna has used in the comics as
Yep.
well.
It
So
was.
they're definitely using, as always, the comics as a blueprint and just riffing off of the comics. So
Hmm.
it's interesting.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, and we'll definitely there's lots of questions, as I said in the spoiler free portion of the conversation. There's lots of questions that haven't been answered, and lots of questions that this episode raises. I mean, I think the only thing that we really answer is who's at the end of the rainbow, or who's at the end of
Right.
who's at the end of the universe, or the end of time, and we know that it's a version of Kang, or that's all we really get to know. We don't really get to know whether or not what's going on with Ravonna, how much she knew, whether or not she knew she was a variant, because she had that pen like a souvenir. Like maybe she was the only person inside of all of the TVA who knew she was a variant. But she definitely doesn't know who Kang is, because she goes off on that adventure to find who's in charge, because she thinks that that's the only person that gets to have free will. So maybe she's intoxicated by power.
Right.
So yeah, and yeah, and like I said, Kang's death, or Immortus's death, opens up lots of different questions, and opens up the multiverse.
Yeah, and I just wonder, because there was some rumors online about how, they're going to be taking each of the multiverse characters from the What If series and kind of forming their own kind of like multiverse Avengers in some ways. I wonder if the premise of that is because of what happened here. I'm not sure if they're going to have some connection or whatsoever, as to what kind of propelled them to do something along those lines. And maybe that might lead to, they felt as though it might lead to some kind of defeat of some other Kang variant. And so we might see Kang again in some other type of form in the other films as well. So Kang is going to be showing up, I would say, a lot, based on this. And you're going to see, like you said, Nathan, all those different forms. And the audience, is going to be taken for a ride as to like kind of distinguish which Kang is good, which Kang is evil, which Kang is gray, or somewhere in between, or whatever. It's going to get really confusing for a lot of people. So I think that for Marvel's sake, they're going to have to really streamline it a little bit, but also don't go crazy with it, because people are not going to start understanding it unless you're really going to get into keep watching the shows. That's the thing, is going to keep people hooked to the shows.
Yeah, I guess we'll get to see whether or not there's going to be fatigue, and whether or not people are going to be annoyed. I mean, Kevin Feige has said in interviews that you don't have to watch the shows to understand the movies, but obviously the shows are enriching the movies. Even if Kang shows up in Quantum Mania, it's not going to be this Kang, so you don't necessarily have to know that this Kang exists, but it'll give you a richer experience that this Kang exists, and understand that the Kang that shows in Quantum Mania is not the only Kang that has existed or does exist. So yeah, there's that. So yeah. Any, I guess, final thoughts? We've been talking a little bit longer than the episode itself was.
I think the one final thing is that Kang does get connected to, in an indirect way, to Apocalypse, and also to the Eternals. So, and of course, Fantastic Four, being connected as well. So there's a lot of, and then Young Avengers. So there's a lot of different avenues in which they can kind of connect all this together in Phase 4. But definitely, this is going to be the multiverse phase, and there's going to be a lot of surprises, I would say, and big reveals, I think, throughout the next kind of iterations and things like that, with the What If series, but then subsequently all the other films that are be coming out later this year and into next year. So it's going to be very exciting. This is so they're kind of like, again, they're branching off into like two different areas where they're doing the multiverse kind of set of films and Disney Plus series, and then they're doing the more grounded ones with Black Widow, with the new Black Widow, and then with the other with Falcon Winter Soldier, Captain America. So they're getting more grounded with that, and then the multiverse stuff. So it'd be very interesting to kind of see how they meld together, and whether or not Shang-Chi is going to be which one is it going to be. So that's going to be coming in September, so we'll find out pretty soon, I would say.
All right. Well, that is what we think of the episode. Definitely enjoyed it, but we want to hear what you guys think of the episode. Comment down below and like and subscribe for more content like this. And we will see you next time, probably in a few weeks, to talk about the last few episodes of Bad Batch. It's actually getting pretty good. So, all right. Thanks, guys.